Welcome to the very first deep dive. We're going to be talking about something super cool today, company games and business simulations. We're going to be looking at a new journal issue.
Oh yeah, this one, the Company Games and Business Simulation Academic Journal.
That's the one, though I think it's got an even longer title than that.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. Company Games and Business Simulation Academic Journal, International Journal of Simulation and Gamification in the Field of Business Management.
That's
Fun thing. It's published in Huelva, Spain, but it's got people writing in it from everywhere. This journal really digs deep into how games and simulations are like changing how we learn and how we work.
So you're saying it's not just for like professors and researchers?
Right. What's really neat is that it brings together like the theory stuff and the practical stuff. You'll see super new research from professors, and then right alongside that, you'll find case studies from companies that are like using these techniques out in the real world.
Wow, that's so cool. It sounds like anyone who wants to like stay ahead of the game in this field should be reading this journal. Okay, before we get into the articles themselves, can you give us a little background on like who the people are behind this? Who are the big names shaping this field?
So the editors are Dr. Francisco Jose Martinez, he's from the University of Huelva, and Dr. Inmaculada Puebla from the Francisco de Vitoria University. Both of those are in Spain. And the scientific board, it's got experts from all over Peru, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, the UK. It really shows how global this whole thing is.
That's awesome. Okay, enough about the journal itself. Let's get to the good stuff. What were some of the things in this issue that really caught your eye?
There's this one article, a case study from Costa Rica's National Technical University that I thought was really interesting. It's about this group of students who actually designed these training workshops, but they were gamified.
So they weren't just playing games in class, they were actually making them. Wow.
Exactly. And they use this strategy called GELHUP. It stands for playing, writing, reading, speaking, and learning. It's all about making people active in the learning process, and it sounds like it worked really well.
How could you tell it worked well?
Well, the study said there was way more engagement from the students, and they got tons of positive feedback. The people taking part in the workshops were saying things like, excellent, very creative, and even some people said, wow, these people are going places. So I think it's safe to say the workshops really made an impact.
That's so cool. But I'm curious, did they actually measure like any real benefits, or was it just about making people feel good?
It wasn't just about good vibes. They saw that the students got better at teamwork, communication, and leadership. So it wasn't just fun and games. They actually learned some real practical skills that they can use in their careers.
That's what I love about this stuff. It's not just some theory. You actually see these ideas being put into practice and making a difference.
For sure. Of course, the researchers did say there were some limitations, like they didn't have a ton of money, and some of the professors weren't too keen on it. They prefer the old ways of teaching.
Yeah, I get that. Change can be scary, especially at universities.
Yeah.
But it also shows you that innovation doesn't happen overnight. It takes people who are willing to push the boundaries and challenge the status quo.
Totally. And speaking of pushing boundaries, this issue of the journal also has a really interesting look at AI in university education.
Oh yeah, I've been hearing so much about AI lately. Is it really going to revolutionize education, or is it just hype?
Well, this research article tries to answer that question. They surveyed a bunch of university teachers, 178 of them in Paraguay, to get their opinions. And basically, they think AI is a useful tool, but they don't think it's going to replace them completely.
So no robot teachers anytime soon.
Not according to these teachers. They see AI more as a partner that can help them do things like personalized learning for each student, come up with creative teaching strategies, and take care of some of the administrative stuff that takes up so much of their time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
AI could free up teachers to do what they do best.
Yeah.
Actually teach and mentor their students. But I bet there's some concerns too, right?
Yeah, for sure. The teachers brought up some good points about like ethics and making sure we use AI responsibly. They're not against the technology. They just want to make sure it's used in a way that's thoughtful and doesn't cause any harm.
Which is super important. Every new technology has some downsides, and we need to be aware of those as we're exploring its potential benefits.
Yeah.
It sounds like these teachers are approaching AI with like a good balance of excitement and caution.
Right. And that's what makes what they have to say so valuable. They're not just buying into the hype, but they're not writing it off either. They're really thinking critically about how AI could be used to make education better, and they're also thinking about the potential pitfalls.
I like that perspective a lot. Okay, so we've got gamification in action, AI on the horizon. What else is happening in the world of company games and business simulations?
Well, there's this article that looks at how business simulations can actually empower students. And they focus on this specific program called the Rito 2024 Business Simulation Competition.
Ooh, a competition. Tell me more.
It's pretty cool. You've got all these students from all over the world, and they take part in this business simulation where they're like making big decisions, managing resources, and competing against other teams. It's a pretty intense environment that forces them to think critically, work together, and solve problems. Those are all super important skills in the real world.
It sounds like a crash course in running a business,
Yeah.
with all the excitement and challenges that come with it.
Yeah, it's like that. And get this, the research actually shows that these types of business simulations, like Rito 2024, can make students feel more empowered. They develop a stronger sense of like agency, competence, and control, basically. They feel more equipped to tackle challenges and achieve their goals, not just in the simulation, but in their future careers, too.
That's amazing. It's like they're getting a taste of what it feels like to be a successful entrepreneur or a business leader, and that can be a huge confidence boost.
Exactly. And, speaking of empowerment, I think it's worth mentioning that this study did have some limitations. So, like, this study was done specifically looking at people in a business competition. So it might not apply to, like, every learning environment. It could be that, like, the whole competition thing made them feel more empowered. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense. Competition can definitely get people motivated.
Totally.
Sure.
And the researchers also said that when they like combined the different parts of empowerment into one measurement, they might have missed some of the details. So even though what they found is useful, it might be a good idea to do more research to like really dig into those specifics.
Always room for more research. But overall, it sounds like these business simulations have a lot of potential to help students build those important skills and that can-do attitude that's so important for success.
Absolutely. Okay, switching gears a bit, this issue also talks about corporate universities. Have you ever heard of those?
Corporate universities. That sounds kind of intense, like some super serious business school.
Well, it's more like a company having its own special place for learning. So instead of sending people to outside courses, they have their own internal university where they can invest in their employees' growth and development.
So it's all about making the learning experience fit the company's specific needs.
Exactly. It's about making sure the training aligns with the company's goals and their culture. And this article looks at a specific way to measure the impact of these corporate universities. It's called the Balanced Scorecard.
Balanced scorecard. That rings a bell. Can you remind me what that is again?
Think of it like a dashboard that shows you how your company's doing. But instead of just looking at like, money stuff, it also measures things like, are customers happy? Are things running smoothly inside the company? And are employees learning and growing?
Oh, right. So it gives you a much bigger picture of the company's performance.
Exactly. And when you use this balanced scorecard for corporate universities, it helps them show how valuable they are to the company, and it helps them make their programs even better. They can track things like how engaged employees are, if their skills are improving, and even how it affects things like sales or customer satisfaction.
So they can prove they're not just a nice perk, but something that really helps the company succeed.
You got it. And the article has a great example, Saudi Aramco. They use the balanced scorecard in their leadership center to make sure that what they're teaching is helping them reach their business goals.
Makes you wonder what they're teaching over there. Do they talk about what kind of stuff these corporate universities are focusing on?
Well, one thing that's getting really popular is, you guess it, business simulations.
Of course. They're everywhere. And it seems like there's a good reason for that. What makes business simulations so good for training people in companies?
Well, it's like a virtual playground for professional development. People can practice their skills, try out different strategies, and mess up without any real consequences. Plus, they're often designed to fit the company's specific situation, so what they learn is immediately useful.
It's like a flight simulator, but for business. You get to practice those high-stakes maneuvers without worrying about crashing and burning.
Right. And there's a study in this journal issue that looked at how effective these business simulations are for helping people develop management and group skills. They did it at a university in Colombia, and they surveyed like 290 business students to see what they thought.
So they wanted to understand how students felt the simulations affected their learning.
Exactly. And the results were pretty positive. The students thought the simulations were helpful for learning important management skills like making decisions, thinking strategically, and managing money. They weren't just playing games, they were actively learning and picking up practical skills.
I'm seeing a trend here. These simulations are popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
Did the study look at any differences between how men and women experienced the simulations?
Yeah. They used the statistical method called ANOVA to see if there were any gender differences. And they did find some interesting stuff. For example, the women tended to focus more on building relationships with their team members while they were making decisions in the simulations.
That's interesting. It makes sense with what we see in real life. Women are often really good at building strong relationships and encouraging collaboration.
Yeah. And the study found that the men tended to focus more on competition and achieving specific goals in the simulations.
So the men were more focused on like winning the game, while the women were more focused on working together. Of course, it's not always like that, but it's interesting to see those patterns.
Absolutely. It shows you why it's so important to have different perspectives on a team. Different approaches can lead to better and more well-rounded results. Now, the researchers did point out some limitations with their study, of course.
Right, no study's perfect. What were some of the things they mentioned?
Well, one thing was that they only looked at certain skills. So even though they found positive results for things like decision-making and strategic thinking, they didn't measure other things like ethics, innovation, or empathy.
Those are all super important skills too.
For sure. And they also realized that the study didn't really look at the long-term effects of these simulations on the students' careers. More research is needed to see how those skills translate into real-world success.
That's true. It's one thing to do well in a simulation, it's another to actually make it in the real business world. But these findings are still pretty encouraging. It sounds like these simulations can be really helpful for developing those core management skills.
Exactly. And speaking of navigating the complexities of the real world, this journal issue also talks about the changing role of leadership in shaping a company's culture.
Oh, leadership. That's always a big topic for businesses.
Yeah.
What are some of the key takeaways from that article?
Well, they really emphasize the importance of empathy and working together as being like really important for effective leadership in today's world where things are changing so fast.
Yeah, you hear a lot about the need for more empathetic and collaborative leaders these days.
And for good reason. The article shows how these qualities can help build a stronger company culture, get employees more engaged, and ultimately lead to better business performance. It's not just about being the boss, it's about inspiring people, motivating them, and giving them the power to do their best work.
So how do you measure those qualities? Is it just like a gut feeling?
Well, the researchers actually came up with a questionnaire to assess those specific leadership dimensions, empathy and collaborative work, and they did a pilot study with 40 leaders from businesses and educational institutions in Mexico and Spain.
So they got a good mix of perspectives from different industries and cultures. How did the questionnaire work out?
The early results were really promising. They found that it was both valid and reliable in measuring how empathy and collaborative work affect leadership effectiveness.
So it's not just about warm and fuzzy feelings.
Yeah.
There's actual data to support it.
Exactly. And they're continuing to work on the questionnaire and make sure it's accurate. It's exciting to see tools like this being developed to help companies create more empathetic and collaborative leaders.
The world definitely needs more of those. Now, before we get too carried away with leadership, I have to ask, what else is in this issue that we absolutely have to know about?
Well, there's this other really interesting topic that they explore, psychological empowerment.
Psychological empowerment. Now, that sounds intriguing. What exactly does that mean?
Basically, it's how people see their own ability to influence the world around them and achieve their goals.
So it's about feeling confident and capable, like you have the power to create your own future.
Exactly. And this article looks specifically at how, you guessed it, computerized business simulations can help business students develop this sense of psychological empowerment.
Business simulations strike again. Are you noticing a theme here? They really do seem like such a versatile tool for learning and development. But how do these simulations actually contribute to this feeling of empowerment in students?
Well, the article talks about a study they did using data from that Rio 2024 Global Business Simulation Competition. Remember that one?
Oh yeah, the international business battle we talked about earlier, the one that gets students all excited about the world of business.
That's the one. They surveyed 451 participants from all sorts of different backgrounds, and they analyzed their experiences and how empowered they felt after taking part in the competition.
So they were looking at how this challenging and immersive simulation affected the students' sense of agency and control. Did they find that it actually made a difference?
Their findings were really interesting. Taking part in the simulation significantly boosted the students' psychological empowerment. And they measured this using a 3-factor model of psychological empowerment.
Okay, Break that down for me. What are these three factors?
So the intrapersonal dimension is all about how individuals see themselves and what they believe they can do. The interactional dimension looks at how people feel about their ability to influence their social environment. And the behavioral dimension is focused on the actions people take to have control and reach their goals.
So it covers both what's going on inside a person's head and the actions they take in the world. Did they find that the simulation affected all three of those dimensions equally?
That's where things get a little unexpected. What they found actually supported a two-factor model instead of the three-factor one they started with.
Oh, a plot twist. So
Yeah.
they had to change their model based on the data they collected.
Right. The interpersonal and behavioral dimensions actually kind of merged together, and they called that new factor cognitive behavioral empowerment.
So what's happening in people's minds and the actions they take are more connected than they initially thought.
Exactly. It suggests that there's a really strong link between what students believe about their abilities and what they do to show those abilities.
Makes sense. And what about the interactional dimension? Did that stay separate?
Yep, the interactional dimension was still distinct, which shows how important analytical and contextual skills are for navigating complex situations.
So it's not just about believing in yourself and taking action. It's also about understanding the world around you and using analytical skills to make smart choices.
You got it. And this two-factor model gives us a more detailed and practical way to understand and encourage psychological empowerment in both educational and professional settings. It's all about giving people the skills and the right mindset to succeed in today's complex and ever-changing world.
It's all coming together now. This journal issue really highlights all the different ways that company games and business simulations can be used to make learning and development better. From gamified workshops to AI-powered learning platforms to immersive business competitions, it's clear that this field is really pushing the boundaries of traditional education and training. But I'm sure there are still some limitations and challenges to think about, right?
Absolutely. Every research study has its limits, and this one's no different. So one thing they pointed out was that the study only looked at students in this specific competition setting. It's possible that, the results might be different for people in other types of learning environments.
Right, maybe the competition aspect kind of amplified things a bit.
Yeah.
It's hard to say for sure how much of the empowerment boost came from the simulation itself versus, the excitement of competing against other teams.
Yeah, for sure. And they also mentioned that when they simplified their model from 3 factors to 2, they might have lost a little bit of detail. So even though the 2-factor model is easier to understand, it might not capture, the full picture of psychological empowerment.
It's always a balancing act, right? You gain clarity, but you might lose some of the nuance. But overall, it seems like this research adds to what we already know about business simulations and how they can really change how people see their own abilities and their potential to impact the world.
Totally. And this journal issue doesn't stop there. It goes on to look at how business simulations can be used to make company culture stronger, especially when companies are going through big changes or facing tough challenges.
That makes a lot of sense. In today's world, businesses need to be able to adapt quickly, and having a strong, flexible culture can really make a difference.
Right.
But how do simulations help with that?
Well, think about it. Simulations give employees a safe space to try out new ways of doing things, work together to find solutions, and basically learn how to handle tough situations without any real-world risks.
So it's like a dress rehearsal for real-world challenges. They can experiment and make mistakes without worrying about messing things up.
Exactly. It lets them dip their toes in the water, learn from their stumbles, and get better at those super important teamwork and communication skills that are so vital for a healthy company culture.
It's like team building on steroids. Way more fun than those awkward trust falls and icebreakers, right?
Uh-huh, totally. And there's this case study in the journal about a company that used a business simulation to tackle a specific cultural problem they were having.
Ooh, I love a good case study. What was the problem?
It's a pretty common one, actually. Different departments weren't communicating or working together very well. Everyone was stuck in their own little silos, and it was really affecting how efficient and effective they were.
Classic silo mentality. It's like a tale as old as time. How do they deal with it?
They decided to try something new. They created a business simulation that basically forced people from different departments to work together towards a common goal. They had to talk to each other, share information, and use each other's expertise to succeed.
So it wasn't just about learning as individuals. It was about learning how to be a real team. Did it work?
It did. After the simulation, the employees said that communication and collaboration between departments had improved a lot. They were actually talking to each other and working together better.
Sounds like the simulation helped break down those walls between departments and create a more collaborative and connected work environment.
Exactly. It changed how people thought and gave them a shared experience that brought them closer together. It's a great example of how innovative approaches can be used to create a culture of learning and growth.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive. We talked about gamified workshops, AI in education, and how business simulations can empower both students and employees. It's clear that this whole field is full of potential. And the big takeaway for me is the power of learning by doing, by actually getting involved and immersing yourself in the experience.
You nailed it. Whether it's games, simulations, or even those cool corporate universities, it's all about going beyond just listening and creating opportunities for active participation and hands-on learning.
And when people are actively involved in the learning process, they understand things better, remember them longer, and get more meaningful results. It's not just about stuffing your head with facts. It's about using that knowledge, experimenting with it, and making it your own.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's about ditching the textbook and embracing the power of real experience.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought to chew on. We've seen how powerful business simulations can be for individuals and for companies. But what about using these ideas in our personal lives? How can we use the principles of gamification and simulation to improve ourselves and achieve our personal goals? What if we created our own simulations for personal growth?
That's a really interesting question to think about. It's something we can all explore as we continue to learn and grow.
Definitely. So until next time, keep learning, keep playing, and keep those minds active. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.